Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Feels Dropbox. If you are new here, hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a 32-year-old artist living in New York. And since I started creating on the internet, a lot of people have been sharing their stories with me, their stories of dating struggles, life struggles, career burnout, feeling left behind. I hear a lot of these stories all the time on my DMs. And I wanted to create a space where people felt safe to share that with everybody else because I really believe that we are all just human doing human things, and a lot of us are more similar than we think we are. So I wanted to make this space so that remember that you are not alone in any of the struggles you're going through. There are so many people in the world who also struggle with relationships, with not feeling good enough, with feeling left behind, and in the society where we're constantly hustling all the time to optimize, be productive, and make the most money we can in the fastest way possible. This is your reminder that there is always space and time to slow down, reflect, and really take the time to notice the beautiful things around us, because that's what makes life worth living. I created this space because I wanted people to feel okay just to be themselves and trust that there's always going to be someone who's going to listen. We may not always understand, but there's always space to listen. So if you ever feel called to share your story as well, remember all of these are anonymous. And the whole point of this is that we all remember that we are all just human. Seriously. We are all doing this weird thing together, and life is hard. Life is really hard. And the best thing we can do for ourselves is to know that there are people around us, there's community around us, and we just gather around together and just learn from each other. Learn from what other people have gone through. I hope this video or this episode or this podcast inspires you to just be your most authentic self as much as you can be, and just know that your people are out there. Your people are out there. As long as you truly show up as you are, they will be there. If you ever do feel called to share, I'm going to leave the link through the Google form in the show notes or in the caption below. So please feel free to share your story. Remember, they are always anonymous, or you can ask for advice. But if you are a listener and you want to comment and add your own story and share your advice for the poster, please remember, always be kind in your comments, because your life is yours and theirs is theirs. And I am personally also in no place to be giving people unsolicited advice or telling people how to live their lives, because end of the day, everyone is responsible for their own life. I just want to remind everyone, always be kind to yourself and to others, because you never know what someone else is going through. And so, without further ado, let's dive into the first story. So I have been doing this thing where I have been sharing 2 stories per episode, but I think I want to give a little bit more space to each story itself. So I will be sharing one story today, and today's story is from Anonymous. Here's the story. I recently went through a breakup of a 4-year relationship. He was my first love, and I moved to a different country partly because of him. So it hit hard when it happened, and I had a bit of an existential crisis because I had always imagined a future with him, since we had gotten to a point where marriage was the next step. I tried different ways to heal, like joining different social events and reconnecting with my hobbies. I also have to self-evaluate to understand more about my true self, because as my people-pleasing self, I realized I might have shaped myself in a way that could work for the relationship, if I want kids, my religion, etc. I wanted my values to align with my ex, so I convinced myself that it's what I wanted too. But now that I'm by myself, I'm forced to really look inwards to ask myself, is that really what I want? Or is it something I wanted because I wanted the relationship to work? I've realized I didn't truly know myself when I was in that relationship. Rather, I was just going with the flow and prioritizing the relationship more than my needs. It's a long process of self-discovery, but so far I've learned a lot more about myself. It's still hard going through the season of life, but I'm glad it's making me reconnect with myself more. So, thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate the bravery of sharing how this breakup has taught you how to get back to yourself. And it's always painful going through breakups. I think a lot of the stories that I do get online are about breakups and ending things in relationships and friendships, because I think those parts are the most painful parts of life. We are social creatures. We want to be in connection with people. And when we're out of connection and disconnected with people, those moments really bring up some of the most painful parts of our history and our childhoods. So I really want to thank you for taking the time to share that story with us. And I think a lot of people will relate to that story too. A lot of people go through breakups of really long relationships and come out on the other end and think to themselves, wait, where was I in that relationship? Or did I change myself too much for that relationship? And I am also definitely someone who has done that for relationships in the past too. Breakups really are identity shaking events, right? They're these big traumatic events in our life, no matter how long that relationship has been or how short you've known that person, or even if it's just like a situationship, anything that puts you into disconnection with another person, it isn't just the end of a relationship, right? It's also the end of a future that you dreamed of. Don't let anyone tell you how important certain relationships are in your life, because it's tough. Like, you've connected deeply with this person, and there's a reason why you connected with them and you wanted to get into a relationship with them. And when that relationship ends, it almost feels like this whole dream that you had for the future for yourself and for this person and your future together as two human beings ends, right? It's like soul crushing to go through that kind of end of a dream. I think a lot of people do try to find safety in a relationship, because then you have somebody else there with you, going through life with you. And that is pretty much what everybody's looking for: somebody or community or friends or people to go through life with. And when you feel like you found that person, it is so difficult to end that thing, even if it doesn't feel right in the moment, because you want to hold on to this dream. You want to hold on to the potential of somebody, because there's a sense of safety there. Your nervous system almost like relaxes when you get into a relationship with someone, because you're like, oh, now I can dream into this future that we have together, and then we'll have a partnership. So breakups really are tough. And trust me, I've been there. It's not easy. But I just do want to acknowledge that don't let anybody tell you that you need to move on faster or you need to get over something faster, because everybody has their own process in getting over something. And some people in my life I had only maybe known for a month, but they made a really big impact in my life. It's not even just relationships, right? It's like also friendships. You can come in and out of someone's life, and I do believe that everybody comes into your life for reason, season, or lifetime, right? And sometimes those people come in to teach you something about yourself, or they show you that you need to spend more time with yourself and learn how to love yourself even more. It doesn't really matter what that reason is, but end of the day, people make a big impact in our lives every single day, and we do need to acknowledge that even if we've lost ourselves in those relationships, it is also important to honor and acknowledge the time that we have with those people, right? I think a lot of people in life are people pleasers. I don't know many people who aren't. I have maybe 2 or 3 friends I could really think of who have zero people pleasing tendencies, and they are forces to be reckoned with. I just have to say, they are people who are very unapologetically themselves, and I don't have that many friends or know that many people who aren't people pleasers in some sort of way. And I think a lot of us bend ourselves to fit what we think the other person wants, because we want that person to like us. We want to feel safe. It is human nature to want to feel safety with other people, because when we're not in that community, it is a threat to us. This is like back when our ancestors had fight or flight mode, right? Like, it was about survival. Having people in your village and having people on your side and next to you was about survival. So when we don't have that now and we're trying to find that, it is so easy for us to want to shift into something or make ourselves more palatable for other people so that we have a group with us, so that we feel like we're in safety. But unfortunately, for a lot of us also, shifting ourselves into becoming someone else is exactly where we lose everything that makes us special and everything that makes us. And at the end of the day, when we do shift ourselves too much to please other people or to make ourselves palatable for other people, we end up becoming the most unhappy version of ourselves. We end up doing things that we don't actually want to do. We end up saying yes to things that we don't want to do. And we end up in places with people or in countries or in jobs that really don't give us any sort of joy, because we think that's what other people want. So we shapeshift ourselves into that. And I was definitely doing that a lot when I was growing up. I was such a people pleaser that I was doing everything I possibly could just to make it seem like I had so many friends. And I definitely landed myself into relationships where I was maybe not exactly looking at that person as objectively as I should have been. I was looking more at what their job was or what they looked like, or very surface level things, because I wanted to make sure that the person I chose to be in my life would help me also fit into the mold of what other people wanted for me as well. And unfortunately, I don't think I was very happy in those situations. And I also personally had to wrestle with a lot of that when I ended that relationship, because I had to figure out what it is that I wanted for me and what it was that other people wanted for me. And I think the best gift I gave to myself was to just spend a very long time truly just being alone. Of course, when I was alone in that time, I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to find somebody. I wanted somebody to love me. But I am truly now so grateful for all that time alone. And even though it was a super lonely time to try to figure out what those things were that I needed and wanted in my life. I'm so grateful that I'm on the other side of that now, where I can stand very proudly in who I am and what my interests are and what are the things that give me energy and the things that make me fulfilled. Because I think before that, when I was in a relationship, I was pretending I cared about certain things or pretending I cared about living a certain lifestyle because I wanted to make sure I fit in, and not just with my partner at the time. It was also just with society that was around me. Did I want to emulate my life to everybody else's life around me? Yes, because that felt safer than trying to do something new just for me. And I didn't allow myself to dream bigger because I was like, okay, if this is the cookie cutter thing that everybody else is doing, I should be doing that too, because that's going to mean I'm successful, and that's going to mean that I'm going to be accepted by everybody else around me. And that took me away from who I am at the core. And I think I was running away for so long that when I was forced to be by myself, that's when I was really faced headfirst with the things that I had been avoiding for so long. And I think relationships really are mirrors to us. I was in one rather long situationship for a while, and then I was in one quote unquote real relationship. Both of these relationships to me were mirrors to myself. Both of them were very toxic relationships where there were a lot of fighting, there was a lot of miscommunication, and there was a lot of insecure arguments and hurt. And both of these things at the time felt like the most important relationships to me because I wanted to build something with these people. I cared so much about having a future that was stable and settled, and that I wanted to build this whole dream with them. And when it came crashing down, I had nowhere else to look, but I started blaming myself. And did I have some responsibility in that? Absolutely. But relationships are a two-way street, right? There needs to be two people who understand themselves fully in order to have a healthy relationship where there are boundaries and respect and love and true trust that has to be built. Because without that foundation, everything is just built on a house of cards, right? It's literally just you're building something that won't last very long if it's based on anything that's just external. And I think in those relationships, I abandoned so much of myself because I wanted this person to like me so much. I wanted this person to accept me. It wasn't even about that person. It could have been anybody, but I just wanted somebody to accept me. And when I found these people, I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that this person doesn't leave me. I didn't have much respect for myself. I didn't know who I was, and I just let the relationship dictate where I was going to be and how I was going to act and what the people I was going to hang out with. And when I got to the end of all these relationships, I was like, wait, who am I even? And those breakups are so soul crushing, but they're exactly what you need in that moment, because without that kind of trigger to get yourself into that space of you're like, oh my gosh, it's time for me to find myself truly, you lose yourself in the process of that relationship. So I am really grateful for those breakups. And on that note, I want to go back to the story the original poster posted about their breakup. Breakups are so hard. And it really sounds like you put in so much effort and so much time back into yourself after that relationship. And I really hope that through that long process of self-discovery that you do find yourself, because I know you will. I know you will. But it's also just a reminder that even if it hurts, even if it's painful, even if it feels like you've lost this dream that you had, and even if it's a really difficult season of life, which I know it can be, and it can feel so heavy at certain days, that you are going exactly where you're supposed to be going. Because as I've learned over the years, in my darkest moments, is that the one thing that we need to always remember is to go back to the core of who we are. Life is truly not about always moving forward. It's also sometimes going inward and reconnecting with exactly who we are and unlearning all the things that we had unconsciously been learning to make ourselves fit in. And so I am excited for you on this self-journey discovery, that you will continue to learn more about yourself. And you know what? It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The last couple of years of me really digging deep into my past and my traumas and my childhood, really trying to understand how I became the way I am and how I see the world and what things hurt me and what things were the things that I could let go of and unlearn over time. I think I've learned such valuable lessons of trusting myself, and when you do take the time to listen and to your body to know what energizes you and what gives you that boost of inspiration and creativity and joy, those things are the things that lead you to exactly where you are meant to go. So I know that breakups are hard, and I feel you, girl. I really do. I just really thank you for taking time to share the story, because I think a lot of people do go through breakups and then jump straight into another relationship immediately. And it's so important to take that time to slow down and look inward and really figure out what it is that you want in life and what it is that's going to bring you the most joy and the most creativity and the most inspiration and the most energizing, fulfilling part of yourself, because it is so easy to overlook that in the constant rat race of life that we're in. I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned throughout my whole breakup journey and being in solitude for a long time, digging deep into therapy work, inner work, and trying to figure out what makes me happy and what brings me the most joy, is that I learned that there were so many patterns in my life that I was continuously repeating that led me to where I was. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the patterns that you notice from when you started as a kid were things that you learned and had to learn out of survival. And it could be something as simple as just like pushing people away before they get too close, right? When you're an adult, of course it doesn't help. But when you're a kid, perhaps there was something that happened to you where it was safer and easier to be alone than to have been in deeper connection with other people. And that's something that we learn over time. And so when you do a lot of this internal work, a lot of it is trying to take what you have practiced over time that have become habits to shift that into a new habit. And I think one of the things I struggled with was I am who I am because I'm who I am. And these habits that I've formed is who I am. And that was something that I had to wrestle with, because I do think that your identity shifts. I don't think who you are is completely static. I think that things that bring you joy can be an indicator of what makes you happy and what fulfills you as a human being, but it also doesn't have to be something that ultimately defines you forever. I think we continue to grow, we continue to change over time, and relationships come into our lives at that moment to become mirrors to what we also can continue to work on or how we see ourselves. And for me personally, when I was in those darker moments and not believing in myself and didn't love myself that much, I think I was attracting relationships that were more like that. There was a certain pattern in my life at some point where I dated all these guys who were also, I don't want to say broken, but we were all just trauma dumping on each other. We weren't exactly getting together because we were both so secure and strong in our own identities. We were relying on each other to fulfill each other's needs. And I fell into a lot of codependent relationships because I think both of us were in spaces where we just needed somebody to love us. And of course, I do think that there was a connection there at some point, but I did fall into a lot of those relationships where I was either trying to save them or they were trying to save me, and we're both drowning at the same time and there was nobody saving us. So it led to a lot of unhealthy patterns and unhealthy connections in the past. And when I finally started digging deeper into why I didn't love myself and why I didn't think I deserved love, that kind of internal work, I think, really shifted how I saw relationships. I am by no means an expert in any of this stuff, but I have noticed a very big shift of the relationships and friendships that I accept now as someone who feels really reassured and confident in who they are, that I don't need other people's approval before I do something, and I don't need other people's validation for how I want to live my life or how I feel about myself. As long as I love myself, I don't really care what you think about me. And it has allowed me to show up more confidently. And of course, I have days when I just feel gross, I feel ugly, and I just want to like crawl up in a hole. That is only normal. Nobody can feel confident 100% of all their days. But I do feel way more sure of who I am and what I want and what I need and how to communicate those needs with people. And because of that, I think I've been able to show up in relationships so much more authentically as I am, and I can hold my boundaries quite firmly. And they're not boundaries that keep people out and be like, hey, I don't want you in my life. They're boundaries to tell people how I want to be loved and how I can best be loved so that they can show up that way and I can show up for them in that same way. And I think that amount of work is not easy. It takes a long time to unravel why and how unhealthy patterns have come into your life. Because I've said it before, if you spend all this time telling yourself how much you don't love yourself or how you don't understand how people can love you, the love you accept will be that. You have to notice what the patterns are in your life, and you have to notice what you're doing to attract what's coming into your life. Because a lot of times the things that we see in life really are mirrors of what we're feeling about ourselves. And so in relationships, if you feel like you've compromised your needs in the past, whether or not that's by, I don't know, changing into a religion that you didn't want to, or like that you wanted kids when you didn't want to have kids, it's so important to recognize what those things are that you actually really want for yourself and stand firm on those. Ask yourself how you can honor yourself next time in any sort of relationship that you get into so that you don't lose yourself in the next one. And that kind of self-discovery, even though a lot of times people think that you can only do that in a relationship, that is not true. Relationships are relationships with everything, right? It's not even just romantic relationships. You can practice that kind of relational skill in a friendship, with your family, with your siblings. There's people in your life where you can practice those patterns and notice those patterns in yourself and what comes up when your anxiety comes up, what triggers come up when you are in conversations talking about your needs and communicating your needs. Are you able to communicate those needs with your friends and family who have known you for a very long time? Wouldn't it be more difficult to be able to do it with a new person who comes into your life where you also have those romantic feelings for them and the attraction for them? It makes it so much more complicated when you don't know how to communicate your needs at all. So being single is such an important time to be able to practice those skills as well, because it does take practice. It doesn't matter whether or not you're in a relationship. Those soft skills do need to be practiced over time. But anyways, long story short, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story. Sometimes all these lessons that we learn in life can really only be learned in hindsight. And I used to regret that. I used to get really sad about that. I was like, oh no, like I could have saved so much more time and I didn't have to go through that relationship and learn that thing. But that's not true. You learn something through every single experience that you have. And sometimes the only way we can learn those lessons is if we go through the whole thing and look back at it later and be like, wow, here are the things I learned and I wouldn't have known that otherwise. And we have to remember that you were doing the best you could in the moment that you had with the information that you had at that time. So I just want to say, I hope you feel any sort of reassurance from this episode. I yapped a lot and I went on a lot of tangents over there. I apologize. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode anyway. And I just wanted to end this episode with this question that you can ask for yourself the next time you are doing anything, which is, who are you when there's no one else around you? What kind of decisions do you make for yourself when no one can see? Because I think it's so important that there's so many things that we do in silence that are the things that make us grow the most. It's not just about performing for other people or doing things for the internet or doing it for the gram, as you will. Who are you when no one else's expectations are shaping you? And who are you? Who are you really when no one is watching? Because that version is who you are. And it is so important to know that we have agency to shape who we are with the daily decisions that we make. On that note, I just want to say, again, thank you for listening, if you are listening, and thank you for being here. I hope that this episode gave you any sort of inspiration or reassurance that you are not alone in any struggles that you're going through, and there are lessons to be learned every single day. And I just hope that you remember that. If you feel called to share your story as well, or ask for advice at all, please feel free to click on the link in the show notes and leave a comment, because that always really helps. And rate this podcast 5 stars, please, if you could. Don't forget to be kind to yourself, and don't forget to be kind to everyone else too. All right. Okay. That is all I wanted to say. And I will see you next week. Have a good day. Bye.